guess now I'm a guest.
Yes, now, you see how he makes friends?
I believe 2013.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Thank you very much. Okay, this is a special meeting on case number 1911, NBH Enterprises, 8825 Conley Avenue. This meeting was scheduled for March 21st, 2012. It has been adjourned to tonight with notification on the door to the town hall. It's been compliant with the Public Meetings Act. Notice this meeting was faxed to the Bergen Record and Jersey Journal on March 26th. And board members, applicants, attorneys will mail notice, and a copy of the agenda has been posted in town hall for public inspection. A roll call, please.
Jeff Bergen.
Here.
Emma Fuda.
Here.
Diane Reed.
Here.
Anna Warrington.
Here.
Joan Claire Harrison.
Yeah.
Pam Pestana.
Here.
Anthony Veneri.
Here. Okay, thank you very much. Sir, in front of you, Mr. Alonso, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, on behalf of the applicant,
Yes, sir. Yes.
just bring us up to date from where we're at.
That's correct. At the last hearing, we actually had testimony. I presented my architect who testified. He completed his testimony, and we since filed revised plans just to include some information that he testified to. So my intention today was to call the architect just to review those revisions. I have a traffic engineer and I have a planner.
Okay, how many witnesses do you have tonight?
3.
3.
And that should include my presentation.
Okay, so at 7, this is a 3-hour meeting, it included 10. The witnesses will be finished by 9:30 to give a half-hour public portion of the meeting. Sir? Briefly?
Mr. Chairman, Ira Weiner on behalf of the objector. I had an issue that I spoke to Mr. Deneen about.
Yes, we're going to address it right now.
Okay.
Okay?
Fine.
I had given you wrong information.
I
I had announced another meeting. Here's a picture of the notice that was placed on the door, rescheduling it to April 11th.
Well, I appreciate that, and I figured that you probably had made a mistake, and I realized what happened. It was a different application that you had announced.
Yes.
I have a couple things to say. First of all,
All right, wait a minute. Notice of publication you're here for?
I'm making an argument that the notice is no good.
The board attorney addressed it, we're going to have a meeting.
Well, I have a right to make a record. I
Okay,
want to
make
make
a
a record.
record and be brief.
I'll make a record. First of all, that notice, if I could see it, I don't have a.
I'll give him a copy, we have a copy.
Number one, this notice is no good because it rescheduled that meeting to a date where there was no meeting scheduled. That's not a regular meeting. It's not a regular meeting night. It's not a regular meeting. You can't schedule by posting to a meeting that doesn't exist yet, and that doesn't exist until you send notice of the special meeting. So therefore, you didn't carry it to a real meeting. You carried it to no date. It's no good. Second of all, I argue that posting is no good in any event, in my view. This is, when you have notice like this, there's nothing in the MLUL that allows the board or the secretary to select to carry the meeting. The board has to either open it, come in and make an announcement at the meeting, or the applicant has the obligation to renotice. So, I mean, I'm not going to be going into great detail about it, but my argument is there's nothing in the MLUL that allows you to carry a meeting by posting. Third of all, I don't know, all I see here is a picture. This could be from this afternoon. I'm not saying it is, but it could be. So I don't know who put this up, what the details are. If you want to tell me that this is the right notice, we're going to make a record, sworn testimony, who put it up, what time, where it is, and that's, well, Mr. Deneen,
Well, first of all,
if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. Okay?
No, no.
Mr. Weiner, we'll submit an affidavit with respect to that, with respect to who did it. At this point in time,
Well,
we're finding that notice is sufficient, and we're going to move forward. I
Okay.
appreciate you've preserved your argument.
well, and I just want to make clear that there was no announcement on April 4th.
And I was wrong.
And I'm not criticizing. I know you did make an announcement. There was some confusion as to the docket number or whatever.
Right.
All right, I have a couple other issues. The second thing is, I'd asked last time, and I'd written a letter, and this goes to jurisdiction too, about the license agreement that the applicant says they have that they haven't produced. That involves their constructing the building in a public right-of-way. They say they have the right to do that. And I'd asked the board to require them to provide it as written letter. I don't know how the board can proceed based upon, I mean, if they have it, it's fine, but let's see what it says. I don't, and,
Part of their case.
well, I think it goes to jurisdiction first. If they want to present it first, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But how can they're coming in and saying, that the board has a right to make decisions over the public right-of-way, which it doesn't, absent the agreement. And I think we have a right to see it. And I've asked for it, so I don't know why. I'm asking the board to ask him if he says he hasn't to produce it.
Mr. Alonso, you have the license agreement?
I don't have it with me. What I can represent, I can argue, is that generally when this board grants an application and it requires a license agreement, that approval to be contingent upon, conditioned upon the applicant obtaining a license agreement. And that's a different process that goes before the mayor and board of commissioners. So the mayor and board of commissioners is not going to grant a license agreement for a project that has not been approved. It's kind of a catch-22.
Right.
So generally, we come to this board first. The board approves it, subject to a license agreement. The license agreement that Mr. Weiner is referring to is a license agreement that was referred to in the planning board approval that was granted, which he argues is no longer valid, or was never valid, although it was never challenged. So what we have is we have a planning board approval that was never appealed, so it's still valid. Permits were issued based on those approvals, subject to the license agreement, but we're not here to construct pursuant to those approvals. We're seeking a whole new set of approvals from this board. So the license agreement, whether it exists or doesn't exist, would probably change based on what this board does with respect to this application. So my position is I would ask that any approval granted, if granted, be subject to the applicant obtaining a new license agreement based on this application.
Yeah, but this is a different issue, Mr. Rankin. The question goes to where is the original license?
I didn't represent the applicant for the planning board.
Well,
I don't have it.
I think it's going to be incumbent, because what he's saying is a license agreement of some sort, even though it's a different project, would be required as a jurisdictional predicate. I don't know that I agree necessarily, but we have talked about the license agreement. So sometime before the conclusion of the case, we're going to want to see the license.
But I don't see why it's necessary, because we're not seeking an amendment of the planning board approval. We're seeking a whole new approval.
I understand that, but a license agreement says I have in place some ability now to use this property. I come to the Board of Adjustment because I'm changing the use. And with respect to that, we want to see that, in fact, you have that. Somebody behind you has the license agreement?
What do you just, I'm sorry. It appears that there is and that's my client, by the way, provided me a conditions of approval from the original application. And this was prepared by Brian Chakowski, the planning board attorney. And on the condition of approval, it indicates license agreement between Township and NHB, and it's checked or satisfied. So I'm assuming this one out there, Mr. Chakowski. And again, this was dated back February 2011. So I'm assuming it's got to be out there somewhere. I'll try to.
Okay, all right. Next, Ms. Klein.
All right, thank you. Well, again, and this is going forward, we're here tonight. I have asked on several occasions in writing and last meeting that if the applicant's going to file stuff, that they send me a copy. It's patently unfair when they refile plans and then I have to find out, now they're filed, now I file an Oprah, now it takes a week, we gotta pay money, they gotta send the plans out to the printer, I gotta send him a check, they gotta wait until they find out that we're paid, and then I gotta come down here and pick them up because if I wait for the mail, it's already after the meeting. Every board I go in front of, this is common professional courtesy. I don't know, letters, anything, and we always copy, and we said we would. I don't know why they can't. I get along very well, Mr. Alonso, it's not personal. But I would ask that anything else that's filed, we get a copy of it when it's filed with the board. It's just, we're sitting over here and he's got control of the whole thing and then we give us limited time. Second, as part of that, not really part of it, but a sub category, is if there's going to be any more special meetings scheduled, and there may not be, I would appreciate, and I requested this also in writing, could somebody call me and just find out the date's okay for me? I understand that if I can't stop, well, I'll tell you why. Because my planner's not available tonight. I wanted him here to be able to listen to the other planners since we have no planning report. You know,
I don't think, did we check with you?
no.
No.
Nobody called me, twice now, it's twice. And I'm here, and I didn't object because I'm not trying to hold it up.
No.
But in fairness, they're going to present planning testimony without a report, that's, with no explanation of the application. I don't
Let
have
me
my
check one
planning.
second. It is common courtesy, you're right, we do that all the time. I'm surprised we didn't do it this time. We usually always say we need the applicant's attorney and the opposing attorney to get together, our attorney, a stenographer, a plan, and board member, make sure the room is available. That's where we come up with a date. This afternoon, I called up my attorney, the board's attorney, and asked him to call you, make sure everything was on board to go ahead with tonight's meeting. My attorney advised me that we were okay.
Yeah, I'm not being critical. I'm not mad at anybody. It happens, but I just want to make...
I did give him a call about 1 o'clock this afternoon. I said, please call him for yourself, make sure everybody's on board with tonight's meeting.
Yeah, well, all right.
Well, he raised, in fairness, I did speak to him. He raised the objection about the notice then. I gave him some bad information.
So we came in tonight and figured out we're okay with the notice.
All right, so and just one other question here, and this is really a question. Is the board, and I don't know if the board has made a decision on this, but I hear Mr. Alonso suggesting that the old approvals are still in effect, and he contends that they're valid, but this is a new application. The use isn't that was before both boards, it's the same, I mean, it might be minor differences, but it's essentially the same application. It's my understanding that the other application, and I took the position that it was no good, and I raised that last time because both reports from the board professionals stated that it was an amended application. I want to be clear whether or not the position is, and whether the board considers the old application viable, because if it is, and those approvals are good, then any additional approvals, why are we in front of this board? And if we're in front of this board because of use reasons, it's the same use that was there. So I don't see how you can have both. And I'm just trying to get clarity so I understand exactly what how the board's viewing this and what the board's position is on this. Are they considering that the old approval's good or not?
Here's our position. The predicate jurisdiction for this board must be pursuant to the statute. We don't have the same authority that the planning board has. And correspondingly, they don't have the same authority we have. I suspect that we're going to get through the planner, and the reason we're here is because it goes to the use. Is that right, Mr. Alonso?
That's correct.
Okay. So as far as I'm concerned, this is an application for a use variance that we're determining. Ms. Hartman, you agree with that in your analysis?
It's changed since it's it's a little convoluted, but yes, I do.
Okay. So that's the legal position.
Okay, I understand that. And I understand it, and I know that this board is here, but Mr. Alonso keeps mentioning that the other approval is taking a position. I don't know if the board's going to...
You take a position about, positions are positions. Mr. Alonso's position is what he states. Your positions are obviously what you state. It's the board's position that is going to determine this application on its merits.
All right, last thing, can we just mark this, somebody for the board one or something, so we have it for the record?
Well,
One of the other copies, I don't care.
we're going to mark this
You can keep that.
Yeah, thank you.
ZB6.
All right, and this is a copy...
This is a copy of the notice that was placed on the door, the entrance of these chambers by our board secretary. The night of that meeting, which was March 21st, and because we know that long ago, these doors have been changed within the last 2 weeks. Those are on the doors. They've just been...
Well, it's a picture of it.
Right.
We actually took a picture of it when it was placed on.
Okay, fair enough.
And this is
We do it all the
not,
time.
Lisa did it?
they rotate between
Secretary.
secretaries.
So-
Two secretaries.
And so the secretary who did this is not here tonight.
Fair enough. I'm not arguing, I just wanted to get it for the record.
Yeah,
And that would be, is that, Lisa did that? Okay,
Right.
all right.
You can see in the picture clearly, these aren't the doors that are there tonight. These are the old doors.
Okay.
That were-
I see. I wasn't challenging that, Mr. Chairman. I was just, okay. All right.
Mr.
All right, I think the others are substantive. I assume he's going to call his engineer back to go over the changes in the plans and such.
Okay, thank you very much.
Or architect, I'm sorry.
Mr. Longo?
I didn't do it yet, but did we swear in this one?
Not today.
Not,
I swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, so help me God. Yes.
do you have any amendments to your previous report, or is this the same?
No.
No, okay.
Mr. Longo, your witnesses?
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Casas?
Name and address and record? Name and address for the record?
Demetrios Kalsis, 901 80th Street, North Bergen, New Jersey, 07.
Again, a little louder and slower.
It's Demetrios Kalsis, 901 80th Street, North Bergen, New Jersey, 07047.
Just
Raise
please
your
swear.
hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
I do.
Do we still accept you as an expert witness, as architecture?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Ms. Casas, you testified at the February 1st hearing, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and as a result of that testimony, you made certain modifications to the plans.
That is correct.
Okay, those plans were filed at least 10 days prior to today's meeting.
Yes, they were.
Okay, can you just review with the board what those modifications were?
Okay. On the zoning table, the required number of parking spaces was modified to include an additional 12 spaces, which was for the existing showroom that's located on the second floor off Tunley Avenue. The total square footage of that showroom is 3,600 square feet, and based on a parking requirement of one space for every 200 square feet, it was determined that an additional 12 parking spaces is needed, which now requires a variance for parking. The second modification that we made at the request of the owner was adding a handicap space to the parking area off of Tunley Avenue, which you can see located in this area. The third change or modification that we made was modifying the existing, or the note which refers to the existing side yard setback. It was modified to 0 due to the existing loading platform that was located in this area, on the northern side of the property, which was essentially right on the property line. So the existing side yard setback was modified to note as 0, and the proposed side yard setback remains at 0. I also want to make a clarification on the side yard setback. Because the property is a corner, there was some discussion in the previous meeting as to whether or not this property has a front yard both on Tunnelly Avenue and on 89th Street. I just want to clarify that on the zoning ordinance, the front yard is determined on a corner lot on the intersecting streets. It's determined by the wider of the two streets, and Tunnelly Avenue being that it is wider, that essentially tells us that the front yard is going to be on Tunnelly Avenue, and the side yard is essentially going to be on 89th Street, and there are not two front yards on the property. And finally, the final modification that we made was add an additional table with plans, and this reflects the requirements for the industrial zone since the property is located since the property lies on 2 zoning districts. And I just want to note that the variances that are required, both new and pre-existing on the industrial, on the zoning table referring to the industrial zone, are exactly the same as the variances that are required on the C2 zone. So both tables indicate the same types of variances that we need. Those were the modifications that were made.
I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any questions for the architect?
No.
Do board members have any questions? Okay, he'll be here till the rest of the night, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get the question? Yeah. Would you like? Mr. White. Mr. White, would you like to cross-examine?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman, appreciate it.
2 minutes.
You're just gonna bust me for the rest of the time, aren't you? Okay, thanks a lot. Mr. Kalsis, at the last meeting, there was an issue as to where the zone line actually ran through the property. Can you show me, did you put that on there?
No, that's not indicated in the plans.
Why not?
I don't recall you requesting that. I do know that the property does lie on 2 zoning districts.
Yeah, I know, all right, so you didn't do it. Now, excuse me. Do you have a north arrow on here? I couldn't find it, maybe I missed it.
There is not a north arrow on the side, on the plot. Side.
The ordinance requires that one be on.
Okay. That is
Are all, these are not all north and south, so these are all different orientations. Various different, there are 3 different pictures showing, are they all the same?
It appears that they're not all oriented in the same direction.
At least on the large site plan at the top, which way is north, just so. I just want to make sure. Okay, toward the bottom of
Yes.
Now, one of the things on your zoning box that shows that the impervious coverage actually went down. And you had to, I believe, exact number. I think you said existing was 56.16 and proposed was 55.
Yes.
I presume you mean by 56.16 is what was there before the construction?
Yes.
All right. What was done to the building? What was removed?
There was a loading dock here. See, it is indicated here, a loading dock previously removed, shown in dashed lines here.
Okay.
And this is the area that is noted on the zoning table.
But a loading dock here was added outside the property line along 89th Street. Is that added in?
Yes.
All right.
It was factored in, yes.
And the reason I asked that is because the old resolution from the planning board didn't have the same numbers. It had indicated that the impervious actually went up, and I think that was consistent with what was marked on your report. So are you saying that that was wrong in the prior?
I don't recall what the previous plan shown indicated.
Chairman, I was gonna ask Mr. Weiner if he's going to be relying on an approval which he believes is no longer valid to cross-examine the architect.
Well, your position is, it is valid, so maybe I can use it. I mean, the board hasn't made the determination. I wasn't really trying, I'm just trying to find out if he felt that that was wrong and why it was wrong. They had it at 56.5%, so I was wondering what, just trying to find out what the discrepancy is. Because he was the architect on both plans, so I'm just
Are you talking about building coverage? Or impervious?
building.
Building coverage.
Impervious didn't change.
Right, impervious did.
I'm just trying to find out why it's different. If the board found that it was going up, that the town was proposed that way. It's basically, as far as I know, they didn't change the plan to come here, and now it's going down. And I just was trying to find out what the discrepancy was. If you don't know, then you don't know. I'm not going to belabor it. Now, you have, again, I'm trying to, and maybe this may even be a question, Mr. Alonso, if you don't know, I understand. I'm trying to figure out exactly what uses. In other words, you prepared the zoning box, and you had to say what variances are there. I didn't see, you're asking for a use variance somewhere on there? Is that shown?
It is indicated here whether or not it's a permitted use or not.
All right. So, you're, as I understand, you're asking for a D1 use variance, is that, or you don't, that's outside your...
That's outside my knowledge.
Give me a moment, I have to get my set of plans up. Council, I'm showing you the set of plans. This is, I don't know, did we mark these, do we need to mark these revised plans, Mr. Chairman? Would you like that, or is it okay?
It's okay to refer them, they're part of the application.
Okay. So these are, this is a copy of the revised plans. Directing your attention to page A3. This is the second floor plan. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
There's a showroom here, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the scale is 1 inch for 10 feet.
Yes.
You said that this area for the showroom is 3,600 square feet.
Yes.
Did you measure it?
Yes.
Don't mind, I drew some lines on my set of these plans. I'm going to ask you to take a look at them.
Mr. Vinnie, before he cross-examines the architect on modifications to plans that were made by the attorney, maybe the attorney can set forth some testimony as to who did who the lines, if they were scaled, how they were scaled, who scaled them, because he's asking them questions about
Wait, let me get this.
modifications that the attorney drew up. So I don't know what these modifications.
I presume what he's going to do is ask him what the size is, because he's got an act.
Well, if he drew them, he knows what the size is.
No,
He just
no.
tell them.
No, I was going to say, this is what I came up with, do you agree? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's gave me an opportunity to tell me I did it
No,
incorrectly.
That's a fair question.
All right, and I'll explain to the board, all I did was I drew some straight lines on here to create rectangles, because I don't have a CAD and I can't do it, and just put it in a computer. I have some numbers on here that I found. I'm going to give Mr. Couches a scale if he doesn't have one. Probably does. So he can look and just verify, because I came up with a different number, that's why I'm asking. If I'm wrong, and then I'll leave. So, you see, I drew a line, let me just go to the board and see. I drew straight lines here, in this direction only, to create some squares. All right, and that, so we could do an easy calculation of length by width.
Is that an acceptable way of doing it, Mr. Council?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
All right, here's the scale. This first box here is within the showroom. I came up 18 by 24. If you want to double check me, please. If I'm wrong, I could be off by a little bit. I'm not,
Well, this area here, there are, it's for administrative use. It is not a part of, it's not really, there isn't a showroom, there isn't merchandise here that is on display, which would be considered a part of the showroom. This space back here is the same thing. This is an office, which is not a part of the showroom. This space back here is not a part of the showroom as well. This box of 2,600 square feet, you're including the mechanical room, which is a rather large space. This box back here, you're including.
Oh, Mr. Cosby, if you can, because I know they've been marked as 1, 2, 3, the boxes.
Yes.
Just for the record, if you could just refer to them by box
Sure.
number.
Box number 1, which is really 2 boxes here, is for administrative use and is not included as a part of the showroom. This box back here, which is not labeled, is also not part of the showroom. Box number 2 is a part of the showroom, and that's at 1,457 square feet. I don't know if you measured from the inside face of the exterior wall or from the outside face. Which
I think
how
that,
did you measure it?
right from the exterior.
I measured from the interior face.
And why did you do that?
Because that's the total square footage of the showroom.
So you measured net
Yes.
floor area, not gross floor area?
Yes.
Is there anything in the ordinance that says that that's the way you measure square footage for calculating parking?
I'll double check that. This box number 3 here is 2,600 square feet. Included in that box is the mechanical room, which is not a part of the showroom. Also, there's a hallway back here that leads to the storage area in the back. Box number 4 is mainly mechanical room, restrooms, and a hallway, which is not part of the showroom.
Okay, I understand that we're talking about the showroom. The administrative, is this like, somebody comes in and wants to buy something, where do they pay? Is it a counter here, or is it in an office, how does that work?
They pay in this area.
All right, so 432 square feet is used for at least retail use, because there are customers coming in and paying in that area, is that correct?
The same customers that are in the showroom are here.
Yeah, all right, so that part is used for part of the retail. All right, you said that number 2 was not part of that. What is this, I have this, I didn't put a number, and frankly, just so you know, for the purpose of my calculations, I only counted up 1, 2, 3, and 4, I didn't add these other ancillary spaces.
Okay.
So number 2, you said, it included the mechanical room. All right, so what's the basis in the ordinance for excluding the mechanical room from the calculation of square footage?
I do not have that information.
All right, so you just
So
did.
you don't have that, I couldn't hear you.
I don't have that information.
Okay, these bathrooms, are they bathrooms that customers can use?
The one bedroom, yes.
That's why I didn't include that. So this area here is, this area. Do you want to, why don't you double check at least? I'm not trying to say
I
that I'm
understand
correct.
what you're saying. I did not include that as a part of the showroom.
All right, so you add up these 1 through 4, I came up with 4879. Your reason you had a different number was you didn't include that, and you only included, what did you include? You included 1, 2, and 3, excluding the mechanical room?
It looks like these 2 boxes here are not included in this area.
All right.
I'm sorry, these two, I can't hear you, these two
Boxes,
boxes.
I've included boxes number 2 and 3, not including the mechanical room and the hallway leading to the storage.
You know, I should probably mark this page because we were talking about it, 01.
Okay.
Okay.
01,
It's sheet A3 of the plans.
sheet A3. Last revision date is what, Mr. Blaine?
I have it 3/8/2012.
3/8/12.
And you would agree?
United States, 4/11/12.
Sorry.
Yeah, just put 01 on it.
I have 01/4/11/12.
Okay, good.
So you would agree with me, if you count the spaces 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to get a much higher number than the 3,600.
That's correct.
And that would generate a higher parking limit.
That's correct.
And if my numbers were correct, I'm not asking you to agree with that, I came up with 4879 or 16 spaces rather than the 12 that you added for the 3,600. Would that be right?
You're asking me if that number is correct?
Well, no, I'm saying if my numbers were correct, and this is the way it was to be calculated, 4,879 square feet would render 16 space requirement under the ordinance.
That's correct.
All right. Let's have a couple more questions. When you created the handicap space, is this a van accessible?
Yes.
All right, and this, you didn't lose any parking spaces?
No, I did not.
The side yard that you talked about before, you indicated that the wider, you use the front yard by determining which is the wider street?
Yes.
Is that where?
On a corner property, the two intersecting streets, the wider of the two streets dictates which side of the property is the front yard.
Is that in the ordinance provision? Maybe
Yes.
Mr. Department?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's an unusual provision,
All right.
but it is.
What's that, do you know what section
You
it is?
can keep going on there for you.
All right, because I didn't want, if it is, it is.
It is, I'll pull it for you.
Now, the side yard setback, what you said was 0 before the building was right on the property line?
Well, there was a loading dock platform, which is indicated here, which went right up to the property line.
All right, and this one,
Excuse me, I can give it to you. In section, it's Article 4, Section 4.4A1, and it's front yard or corner lot. The front yard of any corner lot shall be established on the wider of the two streets abutting said lot, except where the widths of the two abutting streets are equal, then the front yard may be established on either street.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
But now, this loading dock as built, as proposed and ultimately is built, actually goes over the property line, is that correct?
That is correct.
So it's not really it's a 0 setback in the sense there's no setback. It's actually a negative setback. It actually encroaches into the street. So it's worse than it was.
It's a negative setback?
Well, I don't know if that's the proper word. The point is that it's
It's an encroachment.
It's an encroachment.
On the property currently you don't own.
Yeah, and it's an intensification in the sense that it's worse than it was from a zoning point of view, but not, irrespective of whether the town said it's okay to do it.
Well, it does encroach onto the right of way, but we do allow for enough space for someone walking on the sidewalk to.
Not the issue. What I'm saying is it encroaches into property you don't own.
That's correct.
So it is, if you had a 10-foot setback before, now you have 5, I'd say, well, it's less. It's not less compliant. This is less compliant than what you had before.
No, it goes right onto the property line.
Oh,
It's
you're saying
a
that?
0 setback. I mean, I can't determine what the setback is. It's on the right of way. I mean, I don't know how you.
It's on
how
the
you
other,
determine it.
it's on land you don't own.
Right.
So you increased that and made it worse than it was. It was within your property line before, now it's not.
That is correct.
All right, under the board understands. Now, last set of questions. You came up with, on your zoning chart, that 71 spaces are required. Is that correct?
No, there's a total of 73 spaces that are required.
Oh, I'm sorry, 73. 71 based upon the retail,
Yes.
and that's utilizing your 3,600 square
Yes.
feet. And you added 2 spaces for
Storage?
storage. Now, as I understand it, is that, what section did you use to establish that? Define.
It's in the zoning ordinance, it's based on the number of employees. It's-
For warehouse,
Yes.
right? So, this is what I'm asking, because warehouses are a conditional use in some of the zones.
Right.
So that's why I was asking where the zone line was, so we could determine what the use is. Is it your position then, based upon this analysis, that you have retail and a warehouse and retail retail and warehouse on the second floor, and then retail downstairs?
Well, I'm just noting that that's the criteria that I use to determine the parking space requirement for
Right,
that
now-
storage area.
They have something else here, 25% building floor area, do you have a number?
Yeah.
What's that about?
Because they require a minimum of 25% of the building floor area to be parking area.
All right,
And that's what I'm showing here. That the existing is 34.96%, and the proposed is the same percentage.
yeah, but if you have two uses, doesn't the zoning code say that you're supposed to accumulate the parking, not overlap it? I mean, this parking, you're saying satisfies at least in part some of the retail. You said, well, let me make it clear. The retail use requires 71 spaces.
I'm sorry, the retail.
The retail use requires 71 spaces, am I correct?
Yes.
How can you then take 25% of the parking for the warehouse and then put it in an area that's already being used up for retail spaces?
Well, I don't think the code is, that the zoning ordinance is basically saying that we have a 70,000 square foot building, and we only need 2 parking spaces, that we have to provide a parking area that's 25% of the gross floor area for just 2 parking spaces. I don't think that's what it's,
Yeah, that's the point, isn't it?
but.
That you needed 25% of your floor area as a parking area that's supposed to.
Which we have,
Right.
which we have.
And then all right, so you're telling me this area back here is sufficient to satisfy the warehouse parking? Storage. okay.
Storage that
All right, so-
supports the retail.
All right, well, where's your retail spaces?
It's all inclusive in the
So
same
you're-
parking area.
Well, how could, all right, I'm not gonna argue this. So you don't agree that when you have 2 different uses and 2 different parking standards, that you must count both of them toward the requirement? You're saying you only have to count one? You can count the retail within the warehouse area?
If that's what I'm showing, so.
And then that's what you're showing.
Well,
That's
that is
your-
my position, because
that's what
that's
this-
what I'm showing.
All right, thank you.
Any reason, Brad?
No.
Mr. Weiner, you had sufficient amount of time to cross-examine the architect?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it.
Mr. Lonzo, you the next witness?
Joseph Steiger.
Name, address, please, sworn in, please.
Yes.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Just state your name and address, please.
Yes, Joseph Steiger, S-T-A-I-G-A-R, 17 Tremont Drive,